All right, here we go. Podaholiks time and Powerworks with Glenn Power from Powerworks Automotive. How'd you like that start?
Like it, yeah. Yeah, get that as a ringtone.
Powerworks Automotive. And coming to you from the Rove Hotel downtown Dubai, the podcast studio. Got a cracking show. I'm using my British lingo there. We got a cracking show.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about car repair, as always. See if we can't get some good information in there for Joey Woo Woo. And Dougie, who's got the Model T that he's redoing. And then just generally, we're talking cars. What we like, what we don't like. Glenn's going to fill us up on some repairs. And once we get all that done, it's probably a wrap.
That'll be 2 minutes in, and then we'll start talking about other random stuff. Yeah.
I still left up this list because it's not so long ago that you said, check out this list of vehicles from a car collector who I take has been bringing them.
Open the list.
Been bringing them into your shop. Like, I think, and it's the one that's got, in fact, I'm looking at the list here. So I've seen a couple of these inside your shop, but who owns not one, but two GMC Typhoons, both from the same year?
They only made them for that year. I think they might have gone into 93. But they only made them from 92 to 93, so. And there's probably 10% of what's surviving with the same collector there.
Which is kind of odd when you look at the GMC Typhoon. Google it if you've never seen one of those. But it just looks like your classic Jimmy from that era. Like, it doesn't look really any different than the classic Jimmy.
Yeah, well, you know.
Except the engine.
The car's called the Typhoon and the engine's called the Cyclone.
Yeah.
So
it's when they had a sense of humor.
Yeah. Well, it was charged. It was a charged engine. That's apart from a turbocharged American engine. That's very unusual, especially then. And
it's funny because when you had one in, I was looking under the hood, and they did manage to cram it in there. Really
it's crammed in there. Yeah. I wouldn't say nicely, but it's crammed in there.
The correct word might be, it looks like a dog's breakfast.
Yeah. I mean, we've all seen the map of the London Underground and stuff, right? That's what the vacuum system's like on it. That's what the fuel system's like on it. And we had to rectify a lot of stuff that maybe over years and years and years have been looked after, gradually falling away from the agency. I asked the agency here for some technical data on some of the engine parts. We were looking for vacuum diagrams, etc. They didn't even know what the car was.
Well, why would they if they're here? And they've just been dealing with the lock, stock, and barrel of the trade in the UAE. Those wouldn't have been big sellers here, if any. But you would think they have at least online or via fiche or something. Yeah, diagrams. Someone's got to have the diagrams.
It's interesting. I'm on the way to the Fairmont Hotel when we leave here to drop off a Fiat 500, and we did the update show last week with Colin.
Yeah,
as a bit of a behind the curtain of what goes on, and he was asking about one of his Fiats that he bought, and we asked about what's the chassis number prefix.
Yep. Oh, that's right. There was the CV.
So it was 3C, which is Chrysler, or ZF, which is Italian. And
which one do you want?
You don't want the 3C here because you can't get the parts, and they don't sell them here. They're all imported, so they don't decode. The chassis numbers won't decode. And this one is the one that I'm dropping off. We've had it for 7 days now. So it's going back now. It's fixed, but we couldn't get the parts new, so we had to find a used part and just get it ready. It's for a construction company that use it to get around between building sites on projects. So it was stopping them working. You know, you can't wear in PPE on a building site in August, walk 3 kilometers in between the site. So they need the car, and it was a real pain. So if the vehicles aren't sold here and they're not built in a factory where vehicles from that factory are sold here, they're almost impossible to get parts from. Very difficult. So
I'm looking at this list. It's quite eclectic. He's got quite a number of 78, 89, 90, 93, 96, Porsche 911, 928, 928, 968, Club Sport. What a beautiful machine.
You know what, right? You go through the list and it starts, it's almost like he's almost got the right order. So if you're doing a chart rundown, he's almost got it in the right order. But to be fair, I would swap the Typhoons with the Land Rover, and I'm not a Land Rover person.
Really? The Land Rover Series 3 military pickups?
Yeah, because he's stayed faithful and true to how they were, even to the point where So on the military pickup, they have on the center of the dash, they have a big, chunky, never going to break light switch. That's a rotary switch.
Of course they do.
And it's side light, side and tail light, headlight, side and tail light, then convoy, and then convoy S. So in convoy mode, it turns all the lights off. It even turns the engine ready to start and engine running lights off the dashboard, so it's totally dark.
Yeah.
But it puts a light on underneath the car, which shines onto the diff cover,
Okay.
which is painted white, so that any cars behind can see it, but any enemy planes or anyone from the, if you're driving through a valley or something, anyone on the race ground can't see the car.
Yeah, that's cool.
That was like a nice little touch that we did. We painted the diff cover white, and it can't test it here. Yeah. There's nowhere dark enough really unless we go out in the desert with it, which it could do. And it had a full engine change. We found a military engine. They call them pickled, so they leave them full of oil and on the shelf.
Is that the technical name?
Yeah,
of it?
military pickled engine. Yeah,
pickled engine.
So they leave them full of oil and ready to go. Basically, They turn them over regularly. They make sure that they're not seized up. They make sure that they're up to date with service. And then if you have a breakdown on the engine, you take the old engine out, put the new one in. It runs, and then you fix that one in camp or wherever you may be.
Neat. That's very cool.
Yeah.
What was the difference between the military, the Series 3 military pickup and the Series 3 civilian pickup? Was it big time different?
A little bit. There are little differences. Like we say, there's the convoy mode for the lights and stuff, and then there's a few little subtle differences. And the engine, so they have a single belt or a double belt on the rest of the vehicle. I mean, it's it was the 80s, and these Land Rovers were from the 50s, so there wasn't that much difference. I mean, it's only 36, 37 years old.
Yeah, only.
But it looks, you could add another 50 to that, and it wouldn't be out of place. There's a reason. But we've said it. There's a reason that shape of Defender. That wasn't called the Defender then, but you can see where it came from. And the Jeep Wrangler, you can see from the old military Jeep where it came from.
Exactly.
There's a reason they did so well.
Yeah.
Because they were originally made to perform and never break.
Yeah.
And then that stayed with them. So,
of this list, what are your thoughts on the 1991 Alfa Romeo Spider? It's no comment. Those look cool though. They got that rounded hood on the front, and
honestly,
it looks nice.
I can understand the attraction. I appreciate the vehicle for what it is. I'm not a fan of Italian cars, to be honest. The Alfas are the ones.
Well, they had 91. That was the era when they were just kind of starting to get a little bit more reliable, but they really had a bad run for a while.
Alfa Romeo Spider, I mean, if there's anything left of it, it could just be some plastic trims on a pile of rust, some tyres.
Oh, the rust.
Yeah.
The rust.
So, no, look, they are what they are. And the Top Gear guys in the UK always used to say you could never consider yourself a petrol head unless you'd owned an Alfa. Mm. Well, I never want to be considered a petrol head. That's great. So that was good for me, because I will never own one unless I'm given one. And then I think out of shame, to avoid shame, I'll probably register it in my wife's name. I don't want to be registered owner of an Alfa Romeo. I'm already the registered owner of a Pajero, and that's bad enough.
Man. You're lucky.
I'm not. But it's
gonna if they do indeed stop making them, which I can't understand why they would do that, because Colin buys enough of them to keep them in business. But it'll be a collector's item then.
Yeah, but it's a little bit different when they stop making the Defender. Yeah. I mean, those Pajeros, the Land Rovers were thrown together, but they had something about them.
Yeah.
And they're not my most favourite car, of course, but there's nothing about the Pajero. It's literally a sensible car to buy. And
yeah,
we've said it before. They're shocking on efficiency in terms of fuel consumption. They're awful for the environment. There's nothing about the top spec in the last 4 or 5 years.
The signature edition with the leather trim.
Yeah, they were pretty cool. The top spec in the last 4 or 5 years with the Rockford sound. So they had the big subwoofer in the back and more speakers, and they had leather seats, and they were more comfortable to be inside of them. And they've had headrests in mid-range ones for the last probably 5, 6, 7 years. So they had screen headrests. So the people in the back, so children, typically it is a family car. So I get it. Like I say, my wife drives with family around in it, and
reliable.
They are. They suffer with the fact that they're a no frills car. They don't. All of them don't have a service warning light on them.
Mm-hmm. That's a problem.
That's a
big problem.
Well, you do reset them manually, and the problem is you can also turn that warning off when you're doing that reset if you do it wrong. So a lot of them, even though they had it, ended up getting them turned off.
That is not a good thing. It is
a problem for a car that never breaks down. Not a problem for a Land Rover. Because you're going to get the Land Rover here, you're going to get it in all the time because it's going to be breaking down or leaking or whatever it is. So honestly, I've done more engine replacements for Mitsubishi and Toyota than I have Land Rover.
Really?
And on the face of it, that would be something you would never think of, because hands down, the Toyota and Mitsubishi are much more quote unquote reliable when it comes to mechanics, pure mechanics of an engine at least.
So what's leading to the engine failures?
Because they never break, so they're never going in for service. They don't have service lights, and there's not many electronic systems on them. So the Land Rovers are always binging and bonging at you and saying this has happened. You know, you've turned the corner too sharp, and then the AC has stopped working, or the suspension can't keep up, or
it's too much tech there.
Whatever it is. Yeah. So the people are always bringing them in, and take what I say with more than a pinch of salt, because I only ever see the bad ones. But I've done more engine replacements on what people would perceive to be more reliable, and they are, and it's because they haven't been serviced for 100,000 kilometers. Try and do that with any other engine, you've got no chance.
Easy to find spare parts though, like that. I mean, are you finding some pickled engines for the
not
Toyotas?
Not pickled ones, but you can find them very, very easily. Yeah, they are very common here, and there's a lot of accidents here. We have a lot of accidents. Put it down to 7, 8, 9, 10. You could have 10 cars in an intersection. The drivers in those cars all learnt to drive in a different country, and they have different expectations of what the people next to them are going to do. And you've also got the fact that roads change so often here. We're building all the time, so roads change, give way turns to right of way, and vice versa. So we get a lot of accidents here, and there's more common the vehicle, such as a Pajero or a Toyota Land Cruiser, then the more likely they're going to be represented in proportion in the amount of accidents they have. So there's a lot of written off or accident damaged vehicles that you can salvage engines and gearboxes from.
I'm still always amazed at least once a week I'll have a conversation with someone about a 4-wheel drive, and Pajero comes up there because, hey, you know what? For all the things that you hate about a Pajero and that drive us nuts about them, Mitsubishi has been they've been having a laugh because the engine is the same engine that's been in it forever. Yeah. So they're just churning those things out. Yeah. Not a whole bunch of tech. I mean, there's tech in them and they've got the bells and whistles, but really it's a first gen car or a second gen in many ways. And they just keep changing the body a little bit, a little tweak here, a little tweak there. That thing has got to be just a moneymaker, yet they're saying they're not selling as many with people going into smaller sizes of vehicles, which for me actually becomes maybe a positive thing because those things can roll as all 4x4s can. I don't think I've seen any side crash tests for a standard 4-wheel drive thing, the SUV, that when they get hit from the side, they don't roll it.
No, the interesting thing with it always amazed me. And it's out now on the Audi Q8 and the A8. So if they detect a side impact with the side sense, they will lower if the impact's coming from the right, they'll lower the left and raise the right to take the passenger out of harm's way. And it's very, very smart. But I remember they've been talking about that for years, and the prototypes were done years ago. But it's now out and active. But we did a lot about roll and pitch and all that sort of stuff on cars, and how it was compensated on all the tech that we had on the VW group stuff. And when I came here, I think it was a Jeep Cherokee or Jeep Liberty, depending which market you're in, but it was in a Cherokee. Those
Liberties didn't last long.
So it was a Cherokee, and I was in it, and it was almost like they'd come out of the factory, they'd driven them off the line, turned a hard right in the parking lot and thought, oh, I've just rolled it. So there was like a sticker on the sun visor that as you pulled the sun visor down, it said, this vehicle is higher than normal vehicles, it may roll. Please go slow on corners.
You know, I've got one of those on my vehicle.
Yeah, but it was the Cherokee that you see that this is a fact.
Yeah.
You can't have everything. And we lift cars. Sometimes people want to lift them for whatever reason. They want more ground clearance. And
yeah, the
problem is with that, you raise your center of gravity. And the higher that is, the less stable it is on the road. So particularly if you've already got an off-roader, like your Wrangler is perfectly capable. You could put some more chunky sand tires on it, maybe get a bigger side profile. That will lift you and give you more ground clearance, and then you could raise or take off the front bumper and put a skid plate under the front differential. You're pretty good to go. There's no reason to put 4-inch lift on it.
Hey, on that note, keep your eyes open for someone who's getting a lift job, and they've got to get rid of their old shocks, because I'm in the market for some shocks.
Well, there we go then. There we go. Standard though, right?
Yeah. Good. Just the normal everyday. I think my yellow Jeep still has all original shocks on it.
That's a good effort.
Yeah, I was looking at the other day, and I'm thinking, I was thinking, what are those stickers on it? It's got the factory stickers still on a couple of them.
That's a good effort. That is. That's a cracking effort.
Oh, but this whole rolling stuff, and so the whole point of this whole conversation, bringing it back, was people are, if they're going to steer away from the Pajero, they're going to head to cars. Cars are safer anyway. So maybe this is, it's just all around a better thing to happen. And it's not just that brand. It's all 4x4s that are SUVs that are taller.
Yeah, I mean, it's give and take, I suppose. The pros and cons to a 4x4 in particular is a good seating position.
At least it's high though. I mean,
so you've got a good seating position, and you can see more of the road, and you can see more of what's coming. And you typically, if you get hit by a car, you're normally out of the impact.
Yeah.
Unless it's a serious impact. And with seating position in mind, to give them some credit, I've never sat in a car with a better seating position, and it really hurts me to say it, than a Range Rover.
Yeah, I
Range
agree
Rover,
with that.
the proper Range Rover, not the silly sport thing that they do, but the proper Range. I
don't get the sport. I don't get the. I just don't get it. I saw a couple of them yesterday, and the guys had the doors open. It was really nice inside.
They are nice cars to look at.
But I just don't get it.
No, I don't. You can get the same supercharged engine in the full Range Rover, the full fat version, and
why wouldn't you?
Why do you want a sporty Range Rover? What are you doing? For what sport?
Well, that's the question I always ask.
But they're amazing machines, but seating position wise, so I understand it. I understand that, but like you say, there is much more risk, particularly with standard suspension. With air suspension and hydraulics, there's a lot more systems on there and control systems on those that help with that. So as you're approaching a corner, the suspension will be even in rebound rate and damping rate, but you will have, as you turn right, and it detects first of all the steering angle, it then will detect yaw rate, which is the rotation about the centre. It can detect pitch and roll as you go around the corner, and it will stiffen up. If you're turning right, stiffen up the left-hand side as the weight goes left, and try and keep the car level. And they're very, very good for that. Cars do that really, really well. In fact, we were driving an LR3, so a Discovery 3 Land Rover, and I was driving just around the corner, just driving normally, and it was a interchange on the Shakeside Road, and I was going around it, and we were probably doing 65 or 70, and I actually thought to myself, there's absolutely no way I'd be doing anything close to this speed if I was driving the Pajero, because the Pajero would not necessarily roll. There's no proof because I've never tried it, but it wouldn't give you the confidence and the feel on the road to be able to do that. So there's a lot of smart stuff put on the new 4x4s and off-road segment of vehicles that try to counteract what is a massive issue on the road of body roll.
Speaking of moving, I'm going to move us in a slightly different direction, but we do talk a lot about electric cars, and batteries are now the big issue with those. I mean, the battery technology has just taken off, and the number of people who are jumping in to the market, and this one's been on the table for a while now, but the Cadillac Lyriq electric SUV that the folks over at Caddy have put together. And I'm looking at this thing, and the first time I saw it, and every time I take a look at this, I'm always trying to figure out, what car does this actually look like to me? Because while it's kind of cool looking, and it's got a fantastic front grille, I kept looking at going, is this an Infiniti? It reminds me of an Infiniti, or is it kind of like a Kicks, the body of a Nissan Kicks, maybe a little bit? Like, it's got that kind of shaping that at first blush, I kind of went, oh, okay, now this is really interesting. And, the Cadillac guys are pulling out all the stops to make this, a go-to vehicle. I mean,
yeah.
But I wondered if, my big question is it too much too late, in that they're really trying to jump into that game, but Tesla's already kind of got their name on it, and it's all, will people sort of look over and say, well, it's Cadillac, I want the badge.
The front end is unmistakably Cadillac. Front on that car is,
there's no question. That's
that grille is a work of art. The lights, okay, but they make a statement. But I tell you what, the car reminds me of. It reminds me of the Telluride.
No, you know what? Yes, you know what it reminds me of. I'm looking at an image further down, and again, it's the wheels that are huge. It does kind of look like a Telluride, doesn't it? But the wheels are huge. I'm thinking Evoque. It looks like an Evoque.
Yeah, it does with the sort of with the sleek.
And if they just sleeked back the backside over the back windows on this 4-door version, just another half an inch, you'd be driving an Evoque.
Yeah, the back end's quite Volvo as well.
Yeah.
Look, we've said before, wind tunnel shaped cars now.
Yeah.
And there's not much you can do about that. And that's understandable, particularly for an electric car.
It's, I'm just looking at all the different controls.
I don't know what they've put into it, R&D. I mean, General Motors are doing a lot. There's under the Chevy mark, there's already quite a few leaps forward, and they've obviously, with the Chevrolet brand, they've gone more after the everyman.
Yeah,
Cadillac's not for everybody.
No.
When you can afford a Cadillac, it's probably because you've retired and got a few houses dotted over the world. But I don't think you're going to be driving a Cadillac as an everyman. But
they're already setting it out to compete with the Tesla X and Y. They say they've been working in the crossover market for a while. This is kind of their, this is their answer to the Tesla market, saying, hey, you've always loved a Caddy. Now we're giving you the Caddy that's going to work for you. And they're saying that the technology that they're putting into this thing is just over the top. They're just saying it is going to have the best technology out there. And they're saying, it's not being made yet. They say about 85% ready for production.
Isn't it amazing that Tesla have just gone about their business?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Cadillac, Audi, Mercedes, all the premium marks are having to go after them. Tesla have never come out and said, we're a premium brand, we're this, we're that, the other. But it's all the big boys that are going after them. Yeah.
And, they've come out and they said, hey, you know what? When I think Tesla, it's not so much the cars. I'm thinking of the batteries that they're generating. They're building, battery technology has been a big thing with Tesla for a while. These guys, Cadillac, have come out and said, hey, we're using an Ultium battery system that's nickel, cobalt, magnesium, aluminum chemistry. And it's 70% less cobalt in the battery itself, 90% less wiring in this vehicle than the current GM battery designs. Like we're pulling out all the stops to make this efficient and top of the technology. But you're right. They've got to constantly now be touting, hey, we're really good at this, and let's look at what we've done.
Yeah.
Because Elon Musk and co are just getting on doing business and saying, yeah, you know what, we're using tons of tech in here.
It's something that you can certainly not say about a Cadillac is that they've ever been lacking in anything.
No.
They've always been bells and whistles, and they've always been quite the sight to behold, whether you like them or not.
Yeah.
And I actually like the Escalade.
Oh, I love an Escalade.
I do like the Escalade. I mean, I prefer the Yukon, but that's just subject. It's effectively the same. But I do like the Escalade, and the tech's always been on them. That's always been on them has always been cutting edge at the time. So who knows? That they're going to come. Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at that side profile again. It's very Range Rover Velar, isn't it?
The Velar. There we go. It's like, I wonder. I almost want to take a look at who's the team behind this, and did some of those folks come from that school of thought?
Yeah. I mean,
it does very well. It's those tires. I think it's the tires.
Screams sort of architect at you, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think what I really like about it is when I look at some of the stuff coming out of Mazda these days, it's all so round, or the F-Pace over in Jaguar, all so round, and this car is not round.
Yeah, but the one for me, which hopefully it's not the latest Jimny.
Yeah,
obviously gets a lot of love for its looks, and it's just a bit of a, from your experience, a bit of a meh car to drive. It's just, it's a perfectly capable, but it's a small engine, small car, and what really are you going to do with it? Waiting list to buy one, and the majority of the reason for that is probably they're well priced and they just look cool.
Yeah.
And it's same with that Honda EV. That looks a little bit like an old Mark 1 Golf, just rounded off a little bit.
Yeah.
That to me is quite unique for today, and I think I'd like to think that will sell. Obviously, it's aimed at selling in volume with the size of it, but the fact that it looks a little bit unique, I think it probably, for me, would sell better than something that just looks like anything else.
So I think what they're going to be playing on is the badge. I mean, it's Cadillac.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think you drive a Cadillac, doesn't matter what Cadillac you're driving. It's a Cadillac.
Yeah.
I'm going to go get the Cadillac. Can you go get the Caddy? It's like, no one says, can you go get the Caddy? And then what the name of the car is, they just go get the Cadillac. And I think the brand name and the badge name is going to work tremendously well for them.
Yeah.
And I know that we got a lot of folks out there who are buying Teslas. Good luck at getting one. I think it's the longevity of the brand that for Cadillac is going to work. Like, they've been around, they've taken their designs and stuff, and this is their car, and they're putting their knowledge into it. That they might be looking over at Elon Musk's crew and saying, "You guys are new on the block. What's the longevity of this vehicle going to be?" We know, we have a sense of what it might be from Cadillac, given what they've done in the past.
Yeah, I think the only thing is, I think maybe if this had happened 20 years ago,
well, that's the other side.
Then there would be no Tesla.
Yeah.
Not to the extent there is today.
Why didn't they champion this?
It would never have happened without Tesla. This would never have happened.
So that becomes the other side of the whole thing. Is, are you going to get revenge buying of electric vehicles from people like you and me, who's saying, well, you know what? On the flip side of what I just said, it's going to go, well, Cadillac, you guys should have done a better job. Mr. Musk here, he's pulled the rabbit out of the hat. We're going to go buy him just in spite of you guys.
Yeah, I mean, the thing for me is, like, Tesla are cash rich.
Yeah.
The guy's going to Mars. He doesn't care.
What about
just blow it up. Who cares? I'm going to Mars. So come get me. Come get me. Indict me. No problem. I'm going to Mars. I don't care. So, like, that's the ultimate end game here. So obviously I'm pretty sure he's not that kind of person that's just thinking, what the hell? He's going to leave, how you would think, a legacy for his child who's got a name like some sort of weird computer code. But anyway, he's got to leave something. Now,
well, maybe he's going to leave them the boring business. They've got the whole tunnel boring,
exactly,
which we never hear anything about anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's still got so much things going on.
Hyperloop, we don't hear anything about that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that'll just happen, won't it? That'll just be one of those things that happens.
Oh, by the way, it's here.
Yeah. And then, the problem, how much cash have General Motors got?
Yeah.
Seriously, like, weren't they bailed out?
Exactly.
So then and we talked about this when we said,
I think Ford was one of the only ones that didn't take any cash.
Yeah, and we talked about this, right, when we said a couple of shows ago, where we said, look, the thing is, for me, this is a personal opinion, if you've got anything from the whole lockdown, coronavirus, COVID-19 situation of the last 6 months, it's the appreciation of what you can make yourself, or in your local area, or if that's extended to the country. Now, America's a huge place. Huge place. But look at all the decisions that get made in the motor industry because America's such an important market.
Yeah.
AC gas, the biggest one I can think of in the last 10 years, because Americans market said, well, no, the American manufacturer said, we're not going to change our machinery for that. So if you put that carbon dioxide AC in, we ain't selling your cars here. So all of a sudden everyone went back, and it was a backward step for the environment and also for technology. But ultimately, money pays bills and keeps people in jobs, and they made the decision on a financial basis. So America's a massive market. Now, if the American public, who, as I see it as a non-American, I don't know, I could be wrong, own a stake in General Motors, wouldn't it make sense for them to buy General Motors cars?
Yeah.
Get their money back.
For thinking like that.
You know, and that's nothing against any of the other marques and any of the other brands there, but that just makes so much sense to me. And
especially,
or do people think, they had our money without our, there was no vote on it. We didn't want them to have our money. They're polluting our environment and this, that, and the other. They're laying people off left, right, and centre. Yeah. We didn't want them to have our money, so like you said, screw you guys.
Yeah. I worry about the revenge side of it, saying, that you got bailed out. You're still selling these cars and things. Yeah, they give us jobs, and there's a lot of ancillary activity that goes on with the vehicles. But at the end of the day, they're still expensive. And, you guys waited for Mr. Musk and co. to kick you in the pants to get you activated. Should have done a better job.
As a shareholder or somebody, you'd be devastated.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I still believe, because of the raw material and everything that's required, and the regions that you can get this raw material at the moment, it just makes batteries to me a short-term answer. Yeah. I think it makes it the start, and ultimately it makes so much more sense to go hydrogen fuel cell than a battery-powered electric vehicle.
Who was talking about that? We were firing something across to each other on WhatsApp. Another company that is well ahead on, I don't know which company.
I can't remember what that was. No.
But they're well ahead on this hydrogen fuel cell concept, and they're ready to go.
I think it was a university, wasn't it? I can't remember.
Quite a good looking vehicle as well. Very, very sleek.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the answer. We've said it before. Yeah. For me, it's the answer for sure, and I don't think it's a matter of whether you can now slow down the market, because it's become a bit of a political thing. We have it here. It's free until the end of 2021 to charge your electric vehicle at home,
which is not bad.
Which is great.
It's even nice. You go to the mall.
Take a Tesla, right? You get a Tesla. If you go and buy a Tesla today, it doesn't need a service for 5 years. Now that's crazy. That's crazy. But they're so well monitored and controlled that they believe that they can keep you on the road and come to you when they detect a fault, or bring you in when they detect a fault. That's great. And I don't know, because I've never owned one. But for 5 years, you don't do anything apart from tyres. Probably, I would think, brakes, although an electric vehicle, you don't necessarily need your brakes because you brake the motor rather than the actual wheels. And then you're paying nothing to charge it. Yeah. And if you did, or when you do have to, it's probably going to cost you 20 dirhams. Yeah. Like what, $6 to fill the thing? You can do 300 kilometers plus now, 300 miles plus now on a full charge. There's more and more charging stations. But you don't want to be driving much more than that anyway. Like that's no, I know, but you know the way things are going now. There will be governments and local governments and centralized governments that will get elected on that. Yeah. We're going to put charging stations for free in city centres, and there's going to be abolishment of this charge, and there's going to be a higher tax on the polluting cars, and etc. etc. Now, with that becoming a political tool, how do you then change everybody's mind to hydrogen? Do you then have the same problem with electric vehicles becoming so important to the industry? A bit like with when they didn't want to put seatbelts and airbags in cars before. Yeah. The lobbyists from the motor making side of the industry were like, no, we don't need to do that, because it was an extra cost to them, and they weren't allowed to charge more for it. that they managed to put that legislation off for years because they were lobbying the government in their favour. Will that then happen with hydrogen? Will it be a matter of battery manufacturing has become so important to the economy that they say, no, forget these fuel cells, we've got this. And so who knows? The next 10, 15 years is going to be strange. And the problem with that, especially for a place like North America, you can only ever have a president for 8 years.
Yeah.
So why do they care? Once they're in, then what do they care?
Yeah.
Not all of them can necessarily see, well, it's worth doing something for the benefit of the next 20 years because I'm only here for 4, maybe 8.
Yeah. It's be interesting. I think this story's got a lot more to play out when we start depacking it a little bit.
It's going to be interesting to look back on it and see where we go. And, the internal combustion thing is that excites me a little bit because I think you're going to have people owning those kind of cars that enjoy them for what they are. Mm. It's all of a sudden going to change the relationship that I will have with my customers because they'll be keeping them because they like them.
Yeah.
But electric vehicles have to get a lot more affordable first.
Yeah, the pricing's way out, and they need to have a low range one, so you still get the kilometers out of it, but you're not paying through the roof for a luxury car price for something that's more economy.
Yeah, I think if you take a typical tower block here, if there's 100 parking spaces underneath, and that's a massive underestimate, but let's say there's 100. If half of them are electric vehicles, that's 50 charging stations.
Could you imagine?
Where's the cabling coming from for that?
Yeah. Can you imagine?
Where is that coming from? Who's going to lay that cable and the logistics of doing that? And what happens in the event of an electrical fire or electrical accident? Or and then also, and I'm sure there's fail safes and there's somebody's thought about, because if I'm thinking about it, somebody else has. But if you plug your car into a public charging station, who's responsible for an issue? Mm-hmm. What happens if there's a fire? What happens if it's not your issue? Yeah. What happens if
the charger malfunctions?
And it's the same with petrol. You put your car out with petrol in the petrol station, and they put diesel in it, or something catches fire because someone's not turned their engine off, or someone's smoking, or whatever it may be. And there's probably people laughing at me saying it and thinking, they said that we couldn't do more than 25 miles an hour when they first invented the steam engine.
Yeah.
Otherwise we vaporize. So, that's just the way things were thought of, and you just have to get used to them. And I'm open-minded and excited to have that become the norm. But how many tower blocks can we see out the window here? Yeah. If every single one of them needs 50% capacity for charging stations, where do you get the cable from?
I know, exactly.
So this is the interesting thing to me.
And think the feed you have to have going into that parking structure, because suddenly you've got 50, 60 cars that need...
Well, here's a good example, right? It's August now, and it's started the humidity's died off a little the last few days, and the temperature's slowly creeping back down to the low 40s, and it's getting better. But AC's on all the time. Mm-hmm. And if you've got 50 vehicles being charged underground, plus all those 50 people that therefore are in the building, they've all got their AC units running. That's just a huge drain on everything. They've got lights on, they're cooking, you've got the oven going because you're cooking, because you've come home from work, and this is a consideration that is purely down to basically just town planning. But this was not even in the thought when they made downtown Dubai.
No.
There was nobody thought, well, we need to leave space here for an extra 500 kilometers of cable, which is copper, which is another raw material that gets produced in a polluting factory, which gets wrapped in plastic insulation, which gets produced in a very polluting factory from crude oil. So these electric vehicles, they do have their drawbacks, and I'm not entirely sure. I just don't know. Disposal of the motor, disposal of the battery, I'm not entirely sure. I just think fuel cells make a lot more sense. There's such a long-term solution. Hydrogen is abundant in the universe. Cobalt for batteries and lithium is not. It will run out of that on the planet, and it's interesting. The EV thing is a great thing to trigger a conversation, but I don't think it should be the end of it.
Yeah.
I think it's actually probably doing more harm than good to the environment, certainly in the long term.
Speaking of the environment and speaking of vehicles, I wanted to tap you on a couple explanations. One of them is, and we actually had this one. I was in the shop and you were showing me some tires. Why it's important that we rotate tires on a vehicle?
Yeah, well, for a purely financial reason, if you take a front-engined vehicle, your weight is focused on the front of the vehicle because that's where the engine is. Typically, the gearbox is over that front axle as well. The driver sits in the front. You do your steering from the front, so those wheels are moving left, right, up and down with the suspension with more weight on them, so that they'll wear out quicker than the rear ones. And if you want to get maximum use out of those tires, just rotate them every 10,000 kilometers. Just put the front ones on the back and back ones on the front.
So you always do front to back, back to front. You don't do right to left.
So there are different patterns. So some 4x4s do a pattern where it's like in a shape of a G, including the spare. So you'll go front right to front left to rear left to spare to rear right, and going around like that. There's so many different ways to rotate tires.
Is there a preference? Is there the ultimate way that we should be doing?
No, not really. Depends on the use of car, the type of car, the type of drive it's got. Some tires are directional, so you can't put one on the left to the right. So there's always things to consider, but the best and can't really go wrong unless you've got different size front to rear tires is going front to back, back to front. It's very simple to do. And anyone that supplies tyres, as we do, that fits tyres, we will rotate them for free.
And when you're rotating your tires, you should get them rebalanced, right? Or no?
It would make sense to, because they're coming off anyway.
Yeah.
So we call it a rotation and balancing. So we take them off, rebalance them, put them on the front, and we do that every 10,000 kilometers without charge if we've supplied the tyres. We'll do it on a service as well, as part of the service. So there's not. The other aspect of it is, in just having it in your mind that you're going to go and get that done, it allows somebody in a workshop to have a once over of your tyres regularly to make sure there's nothing wearing unevenly. You can make sure there's no steering or suspension issues. So it's just a very, very good idea in every way.
And tires do tell quite a story. You showed me a set of tires that were really worn on the inside, not on the on the inside bead. On the other side, they weren't worn at all. It was strange looking. And then there was a blowout in there too. Yeah,
well, if you get even if you get a very, very slight issue with your suspension, sometimes you get problems with suspension bushes. And every time we see a car, there'll be some suspension component that is getting towards the end of its life now. The first thing that I always check is, are the tyres wearing unevenly, and or are the brakes wearing unevenly because loads are different left to right because the suspension's failing. And if both of those things you get an answer of no, not yet, then the customer can be explained to them that, okay, we'll monitor this. We'll see you in between now and the next service. That's the best thing to do. But in the occasion, in the situation like this, the tyres had worn out and it was too late, and there's nothing to do then but replace them. But also you need to fix the root cause of that, otherwise the new tyres won't take long. I mean, you can wear a tyre like the one I showed you in less than a week.
Really? Just because your bushings are off?
Yeah, if you're doing 100 kilometers a day, that won't take long at all.
I saw a car again yesterday. It was a van. So first of all, it was pretty noisy, and that caught my attention because my vehicles are almost always noisy. So it was noisier than mine. But the second thing was, I was watching the guy who was driving, and it was like he was holding on for dear life because it seemed that there was a lot of vibration in that vehicle. And, it sounded weird, and it kind of looked like it was bouncing, but clearly he was holding on to the steering wheel for dear life. So I'm thinking there was a suspension issue and probably a tire issue as well.
Yeah, I think one of the common ones here is the dampers or shock absorbers. They fail to a point where the spring can just keep oscillating. So they're not dampening the spring, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. And then the tyre is effectively coming in and out of contact with the road. So you get a bit of a droning noise inside. You get a vibration, of course, but the tire wears out like a dodecahedron. You just get straight edges on it basically all the way around. That's more common on the rear. When that happens on the front, you really struggle to hold onto the steering wheel. And one of the other problems with alloy wheels here, I suppose, and the heat is that the balancing weight, so that they don't damage the alloy wheel, but also so they don't spoil the look of the alloy wheel. They're stuck on the inside, and wheels get very hot. The wheels are very, very hot. We typically then just blast them while we're washing them, and it knocks the weights off, and then you can take the car down the road and they're out of balance, and then that adds that vibration and non-true rotational movement of that wheel can add to increases the temperature of the tire, which increases the pressure inside slightly, which changes how it handles and changes how it wears. So it's very important that we always regularly have tires checking a tire can give you so much information about the car. It can tell you if there's a problem with the suspension, it can tell you if there's a problem with the steering, and especially on front tires, you only really need to give your steering wheel a full turn one way and you can see the whole width of the tread. And if you've got a workshop that you use or garage that you use, you can send that photograph of that to them and say, look, is everything okay with this? Do I need to bring it in? And nobody's going to turn you away for checking tires. It's such an important part of safety.
We could have a whole conversation on that. What I do want to talk about, I'm going to put them on our list because I think we're going to wrap up. Look this, but I do want to talk about spark plugs and wires on our next meeting, as well as AC servicing, new versus used. And I got questions about nitro and air in tires, trickle chargers. Or should we have a trickle charger on our vehicles, and additives?
Cool.
So that's where I'm putting those on the list for the next show, so we know where we're going.
I need to speak to Colin about the additive stuff.
So is he an advocate?
He used to work for the company. I think it was STP, maybe.
Really?
Yeah. So we get. In fact, I want to know where trade descriptions are here. There's a Trade Descriptions Act in the UK. I was in the back of the car, and we'd gone to put petrol in it.
Yeah.
And there was nobody there at the pump, and obviously you can't manually operate them. So I'd gone in the back of the car, and I was trying to move the spare seat. And then the guy,
as you do,
the guy opened the fuel cap, went round to the window. And Amy put the window down and said, full special, please. And he said, oh, there was a lot of air in the tank when I opened it. Shall we put an additive in there? And I just sort of popped up in the back of the car. And I was like, no, thank you. What's the additive doing? Of course there's air in it. The tank doesn't collapse. Of course there's air in it. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know who's giving them that line.
No, there's another one they do. There's another one where they take off the cap and then the guy runs his finger around and says, look, it's dirty in your fuel tank. You need this additive. I'm going, dude.
Yeah. So, maybe Colin came up with those sales pitches.
You know what? I'm thinking you're right. We'll pose that to him.
Yeah.
That would be a great conversation. Yeah. Oh, man. With that being said, Glenn Power, Powerworks Automotive, joins us every week or so at about this time, and we have a conversation about cars and more. You want to get in touch with us? Pretty easy. PODAHOLIKS@gmail.com. Find hundreds and hundreds of podcasts by us on PODAHOLIKS www.com. Figure out the order. You can do that. You're like, that's going to
That's the quiz for this week.
Yeah. What's the order?
Leave us an email.
And of course, find us on the socials. Get in touch. Share what you're thinking. We'll do it all again real soon. Coming to you from the podcast suite of the Rove Hotel downtown. This has been Powerworks on Podaholics.